Hi, my name is Nikki. I'm the Obsessive Bookseller, and welcome to my monthly wrap-up for June 2022. I filmed the thumbnail first this time, and it occurred to me that the harder it is to get all of the books in frame, the more satisfied I am with my life because that means I read more books that I actually own. This was a pretty good month in reading, especially considering that I am still trying to unbury myself from the mound of books that I allowed myself to start in March. 4 months. It has taken me 4 months to get down to something reasonable because I couldn't plan my life very well. I had too many obligations. I kept putting down one book to start another because the obligation was more pending. And at one point, I think I had 8 different books going at once. I cannot function like that. It is the quickest way to send myself into a reading slump because it takes me 4 months to unbury myself. I have a video that I found that I posted last year called Too Many Books Going at Once, where I had just gotten myself into this exact same situation, and I'm like, never again! It's never going to happen to me again. It happened. And it has been a major pain in my behind to fix, but now I'm seeing the light of maybe being able to start whatever I want next and only having to like 1 or 2 books going at a time to focus on. To that end, one of the ways I helped unbury myself was to DNF a few things, and for my Read Burn Hoard, I picked The Sorceress and the Signet by Patricia McKillop, which I had physically, but was so disgusted with it that it's already gone. It's out of my life. Not really, it's in the garage, but you get the idea. This one was a short book. I probably could have forced myself to finish it, but it was only going to be like a 1 or 2 star read if I did. I do not like ridiculous elements in books where anything is possible and there are really no rules. It's just at the whim of the writer. I also found the writing style really dated and kind of weird. There is a creative element I appreciate to not composing complete sentences to tell the story, but not when it's at the expense of the reader's understanding of what you're trying to say. I go into it pretty heavily during that vlog on why this one didn't work for me, but yeah, DNF'd. What a bummer, the cover's so cool, I'd had it on my shelf for ages. But at least now I know what I'm missing. I read Consuming Fire by John Scalzi. The first book was just okay. It was like a 3-star read. I was like, but I still don't understand why people are saying this was the best thing from him yet, especially considering how much I loved Old Man's War and the recent Kaiju Preservation Society. And then I got to book 2. I totally get it. This is an awesome series. This second book kind of fixed everything I didn't like in the first book. I thought the characters were a little bit overdone and the pacing was a little bit off. But in this case, he kind of relaxed into it and had a bunch of really cool moments. I felt the pacing was perfect. And I love this one. And I'm really excited to dig into the third one, which, The Last Emperor. I finished that one at the beginning of the month. This one I just started about 2 days ago. And it's currently Sunday. This goes live on Tuesday. I might have it read by then. But I'm not far enough into it to really talk much about what I think of it yet, so hopefully it's just as good though. I read Ruby Fever by Ilona Andrews. It's the 6th book in the Hidden Legacy series, but the 3rd book in Catalina's arc. And oh my gosh, I love this book so much. I'm not going to go into defending the covers this time because there's really no way to defend the covers, but I love the magical abilities in this book. I love the mystery elements that the authors bring in. I love the overall plot. The family that you're following is so cool. This was my most anticipated read for the year, and it doesn't come out until August 23rd. And I have so many things that I should be reading between now and then that had higher priority, but I'm like, nope, this is the one. Dropping everything to read it now. And I'm really glad I did because I absolutely loved it. Now, if you're one of the few who actually have read and loved Ilona Andrews, this is the end of their working arrangement with Avon. So if they follow another character in another trilogy, which they've hinted at doing, they will probably go a different route and self-publish that one. And I'm going to guarantee you that the covers are going to be more appealing. The epilogue of this one kind of hinted at that, and it was actually my favorite piece of the entire story. I thought it was so well done, so I can't wait to read more from them. I read House on the Cerulean Sea by Clune. Before this one got a lot of attention on Goodreads, my best friend, who's still working in book selling, recommended it to me, like a personal recommendation, and she doesn't do that often. So I thought, okay, I'll put it on hold immediately. About 2 weeks later, a really good friend also independently recommended it to me. Like, all right, gotta read this one. So I put a hold for it on my library and then have proceeded to click not this week, deliver later for an entire year. And I thought, I either need to read it or stop taking up a precious hold spot. And because of all the hype that it's gotten over the last year, that there's like over 200 people in line for it, and I was in front and kept deferring. So if I didn't read it and took it off, it would be like 3 years before I got a chance to get it again from the library. I know I could just buy it, but that's beside the point. Anyway, so I finally committed. I took it off hold, read it, and about halfway through I was like, this is a 4-star read for me. I'm enjoying it, but I'm not in love with it like a lot of people are, and I think going into it with high expectations was part of the problem. But then somewhere around the middle, everything changed. I found myself deeply connected to the characters. I loved the story. I loved the ideas. I felt so invested. And it kind of morphed into almost a 5-star read for me and left me feeling very satisfied that I had read the book. So yes, I get it. For me, it brought back a lot of nostalgia from the very first Harry Potter book, where you're kind of dumped into the Muggle perspective of things, and then magic starts to kind of creep in, and you get to kind of experience it as a Muggle, learning about magic in the world for the first time. That's what it felt like, and it was told in a very similar tone. And continuing my comparison to Harry Potter, that those first several chapters of Harry Potter were actually really slowly paced, but you didn't notice because you were so enmeshed in it. But then on the rereads, I've reread those dozens of times, but on the rereads, it felt like a slog. You're like, okay, I want to get to the point where Hagrid tells him he's a wizard. And that's kind of what the first half of this book was. Very slow burn, very enmeshed with the character, very drawn out, slow pacing, and I don't think it needed faster pacing, because the beauty of the story was in the cadence and how it was told. So yeah, at the end of the day, I'm a believer. I've already added other books that he's written to my TBR and can't wait to read more. Very feel-good story. I can definitely endorse it with confidence with how much everybody seems to love it. Yeah, I'm on that train too now. Also, part of my unburying myself from the mess I got myself back into at the beginning of the year, I have been reading Malice since February, and I started a reading vlog for it, and now I'm just like, I don't care anymore. I'm not vlogging it. I'm just going to read it. And I finally am at the point where I can focus on it fully, and I jumped from being about 30% through to almost 80% through in just a really short time frame. And I'm loving this book. I'll probably have it finished by the time this video goes live, actually. It's nothing like I expected. I had an image of the storyline for this book in my head, and it just was this massive battle. Just one large battle. No dynamics, no interesting world building, just a battlefield. But going into it, it's actually a lot more pastoral and political than I thought it would be. What is true that I thought before going in is that it's a very slowly paced novel. But unlike other series that I've read recently where the pacing really bothered me, where I felt like, yeah, I know the purpose is in the journey and not the destination, but at the same point, I'm waiting for something to happen. This takes that slow pacing campfire element, but does it successfully. And I think the reason is even though the overall story is pacing slowly, within each POV, they are progressing. Their story arc is important, and every single person's chapter changes their status by the end of it. And so even though the overall is slow, you still get that satisfying payoff of things progressing within each individual chapter. And I just think it's brilliant. I love all the characters. It took me a long time to kind of get acclimated with them all. In fact, I had to start out with this one as a physical read only because I kept losing track of who was who. I had to use the Kindle X-ray feature to kind of bounce back and forth. And granted, I'm a lot more detailed than most people are or have to be for this. It's just how I like to experience it. Because if I don't know who the small players are in a story, then I feel like I'm missing out. So I really want to make sure I know who everybody is. And so it's been constant cross-referencing. But now I'm at the point where I can kind of switch to audiobook here and there and still get a benefit out of it. But yes, enjoying this one thoroughly. It's going to be one of my top reads of the year so far, I can already tell you that. And I'm really glad I finally dove in. It's taken a lot more concentration than I thought, and it's taken me almost 6 months to get through it. But, you know, eventually, imagine in March, had I not set this down because of a higher priority and actually been able to finish it within like a week or two. That would have been amazing. Just being able to read more than a third of the book in a week has been very, very satisfying. Can't wait to see how it wraps up and then continue. I also finished Trouble with the Cursed by Kim Harrison. I have had an arc of this one since like December, but have been pushing it off because more pending releases kind of got in line in front of it. And so I thought I have plenty of time. I have 6 months to read this book, but I found myself like the week of its release still trying to finish it. And yet again, we have another example of why I really want to only focus on one book at a time and want to limit my arc requesting until I am ready to read it right then. I am not allowed to request it. Because then I get myself into these situations where I'm rushing to finish things and starting things before I'm ready to actually commit to them just because I know that there's a deadline pending. It has been really cramping my style. But in any case, I really enjoyed this one. This is one of the most relaxing urban fantasy reads on the market. I have a full review up, so I won't go into too many details, but I loved the ending for this one. There's going to be at least 2 more books, and anytime I get to spend in this world and learn more about the demons, the better. This is such a cool series, and for me it reads more like a fantasy than a fast-paced urban fantasy, so it's a very slow, enmeshed writing. So if you're more of an immersive reader and have been wanting to give urban fantasy a try, this is a great pick. I also have a copy of Locklands that I've had for a while, and I requested it before I'd actually finished the second book, or even started the second book, because I loved the first one so much. One of the strongest first books in a series, and one of my favorite things I read this year, but it has been diminished in my eyes because of how much I hated the second book. And so here I am sitting on a third book where I didn't like the second one. I would not have continued within a reasonable time frame, but now I have to read this one. And I know it's arbitrary. I have to read it because I tell myself I have to read it, but it's kind of like a punishment, if you will. I'm making myself read what I signed up for just to show myself that you got to be very careful what you sign up for, because if you commit, you're committing. And there are publishers involved in this one. So like I must do the thing. And then I will be really careful about doing the thing again until I've actually caught up in the series and know that I want to continue right then. Anyway, rant over. I've kind of been ignoring this one this month. I'm at about 15%. I am enjoying it. If I wasn't so grumpy about the first book and didn't have all these other books I'm trying to catch up through, I think I would have been okay reading it and a lot further along. Physically reading it has been much more positive than the audio experience for the second one. But anyway, once I finish Malice, which has taken a lot of time and attention, then I will be trying to wrap that one up. And that will be the end of the outstanding obligations that I have right now. Isn't that awesome? And other physical reads, Southern Fire by Juliet McKenna. I finally got my beautiful hardcovers from overseas. So, spoiler alert for the next haul, but the naked hardback is the same cover, just without the writing, and I think that is really pretty. Considering these came from the UK, they're not as chunky as I thought they would be. They're like tall and thin, and the spines are kind of boring. But the naked hardcover makes up for that. Anyway, I started this one after finishing Signet at the very end of my Read Burn Hoard. And that was probably not the smartest thing to do, because it kept me from being able to choose physical reads for June's Read Burn Hoard, which you'll see, I think, next week. But yes, I continue to plug my way through this one very slowly, like 10 pages a day here and there, because I'm still working on a few other books and have been wrapping up a couple of obligations. But as of right now, think I'm at about like the 35–40% mark and really enjoying it. The world building in this one is a lot of fun. It's an exotic, like, archipelago escape with foreign cultures and practices, and I just think it's a really cool series so far. So once Malice is done, then I will read Locklands, and then I will be focusing exclusively on this as my physical read until I'm down to nothing. I don't know how I'll feel when I'm down to nothing and I have nothing pending to read next. It's going to be amazing. The saga continues. Because I've been focusing on all these dense reads, I decided to pick up something lighthearted, Club Dead. And even though those were dense from a technical standpoint, this one was dense from an emotional standpoint. I have so many things to say about this series. This book in particular, it's book 3. I think I'm going to do a full review on it because I just have so many thoughts on what's going on here. But the thing that stands out the most, which I'll detail more when I do the review, is how brilliant of a writer Charlaine Harris is. I mean, it's hard to take an author seriously when they're talking about, like, vampire romance or whatever. But there are so many technical aspects of her writing and so many brilliant things that she's doing in here that's like textbook perfection. So good. And then on top of that, I love urban fantasy, so it's been a lot of fun to see the story progression with that really adept writing. Like, I've been analyzing books for 20 years. The things that she's doing in here, I just am so impressed, and it's from such an unlikely place. So I feel like that's why my mind is like, because you don't go into an urban fantasy expecting like this caliber of writing brilliance. But anyway, I'll detail it later. Balance that with how much romance angst was in here, and I'm sitting here going, I don't really know how to rate this. More to come. And finally, I have been continuing my journey with the Pokemon adventures, because I own so many of them, and I figure I either need to read them or let them go because they are taking up a ton of room. This is another reason why I really haven't gotten into manga, because of the cost and the space requirement. I am wildly impressed with this series. I am so much more interested in it than I thought I would be. The substance that was lacking in Indigo League is here in abundance. The overall plot is just so much grittier, makes so much more sense, and I'm finding myself forgetting that I'm reading a series of pictures with words. You know, it feels like a composed story, and it's just amazing to me that they're able to convey as much depth in such a format. Now, I'm by no means a manga aficionado. I have tried one or two here and there over the years. This is the first series that I've actually read, so take that with a grain of salt. But I love Pokemon, and so far, this is the most compelling format of storytelling that I have found for it yet. But yeah, I'm loving this. And that wraps it up. I'm really proud with how hard I've been working to unbury myself, and I'm really looking forward to July's TBR and a lot of the possibilities that I've been stalling on experiencing because I've been so buried. This was a really fun month of reading. I felt like I got a lot of dense, cerebral books mixed with a lot of fluff that just, yeah, a lot of fun. I finished a lot, but it helps matters that most of the reading was done in May, so by the time I got to June, I was just like knocking them off one at a time. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you've been reading this month, any like standout reads for you. I will see you in a couple of days with my updated TBR for July. Bye. It's the end of the video, and it just now occurred to me that I filmed my thumbnail with the books backwards. And I meant to show them forwards so that you could see the titles, but I've already put them all away. Oops.